This video contains spoilers for Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. So a couple weeks back, I saw Spider-Man Far From Home. I haven't really had a chance to talk about the prior film, Spider-Man Homecoming, on this channel, despite putting it in tons of unfinished scripts, so here's what I thought of it real quick. I didn't like it. I didn't like the high school overfocus, I didn't like the romantic plot, I didn't like the super comedic tone that dropped like a rock in the third act when the movie decided to actually be about Spider-Man and his ideals. It was a fine movie, but the definite epitome of fine. So going into Far From Home, I had mixed feelings. I dug Mysterio's look and the possibility of the multiverse coming into the mix, but the new locales had me really jonesing for classic New York scenery, especially after seeing Into the Spider-Verse. But I always go into a movie with an open mind and try to put it all behind me. And what did I think of Far From Home? I really enjoyed it. I like the creativity of certain action scenes. I didn't hate Michelle Jones in this movie, and Tom Holland's just got great acting chops. A couple problems here and there, but overall, I enjoyed the film. I was pleasantly surprised, and my expectations were met and somewhat exceeded. And then I got home. And then I started thinking. And then my opinion changed. I still think it's an entertaining movie, but that's precisely the problem. It's entertaining. Almost like it was engineered to entertain. Much like Homecoming, it's a fun little romp that jacks up the pace and tries new things at the last minute instead of filling out the whole movie with depth. Avenues they could have explored to make the cast more interesting or situations have more nuance are cut off so the movie can keep it light. And I get it, after going the darker route in the amazing Spider-Man films, that I still secretly love, I know they're not great, especially the second one, but I still like them a lot, and bombing hard with fans, it's natural that they want to avoid the darker tones. I could see that with Homecoming. But Far From Home should have been it. It should have been the movie to take the foundation of the first and puts Peter Parker to the test. It should have been what Raimi did in Spider-Man 2, and I'd even argue what Webb did in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, to take the ideals Peter tries to adhere to and have him fail and get back up. But I feel the most egregious thing Far From Home forgets is the source of all Spider-Man.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I've seen this argument pop up time and time again. We don't need Uncle Ben. Tony Stark is Uncle Ben in the MCU. Tony Stark's death is the event that looms over Peter to become better. We don't need another segment to talk about Peter losing Uncle Ben. And to those people whom I respect and I am thankful to for watching this video, I say respectfully, you're goddamn wrong, because Uncle Ben is one of, if not the most necessary thing about Spider-Man and his inception. And Marvel Studios blatantly ignoring it, or even worse, replacing it with an event that is not even close to the same thing, is a great disservice. Everyone knows the story of Uncle Ben, a good old father figure that does the right thing and is there for his loving wife May and his beloved nephew Peter. A father figure that got ganked hard in the chest when he gets robbed. The robber was a criminal that Peter could have stopped. That guilt is what keeps Peter from abusing his powers and turns him to heroism. In essence, Uncle Ben represents Peter's biggest screw-up. He represents Peter's biggest flaw. He represents a time where Peter almost decided to get back at the world for all the bullying and social stigma he faced. Uncle Ben's death is proof that Peter is a flawed person, a flawed character. That's where the intrigue comes from. Yes, his social quirks and nerdiness is a definite connection that most people feel to the character, but everyone's dreamed of the days where they can get the power and enact a little payback, only to have Spider-Man teach us that even with great power, comes greater responsibility. Now let's sit here and rewind Peter and Tony's relationship and really see what the hell is comparative to Uncle Ben in here. Really all that's there is Tony is a mentor figure that enables Peter to do good, but then he dies. That's it. Uncle Ben and his death have so much more nuance to it that Tony doesn't illustrate. Tony may have sometimes told Peter about responsibility and even has this line in Homecoming.
What if somebody had died tonight? Different story, right? Because that's on you. And if you died, I feel like that's on me.
But here's the problem. Peter should already know this because his uncle got snuffed from his lack of taking responsibility. Why is Homecoming about Peter learning about a roundabout sense of responsibility in such a confused movie when this should already be established? If Marvel Studios really is working with the assumption that everyone knows Spider-Man's origin story, why do they constantly keep retreading the same ground in not just one movie, but in two? What is their obsession with assumptions and implications? Why the hell does Far From Home feel like it walked in one giant circle? Ironically, despite Marvel Studios' obvious attempts at setting this film series apart from the others, it ends up not having a whole lot that resembles Spider-Man as a whole. Now here also comes the ideas that Uncle Ben exists, but he's just not the same one we know, much like how Aunt May is now hot and a worthless character. Maybe Uncle Ben died in some other situation or died under mysterious circumstances. I've also been hit with the idea that Uncle Ben isn't even dead, he's off somewhere else doing whatever. If we're thinking about questions like that, what even caused Peter to become a virtuous Spider-Man? Some say that he isn't the virtuous Spider-Man yet, and he never had that Uncle Ben moment. And to that I ask, then what is the point? By making Uncle Ben non-existent, making Aunt May absolutely nothing in Far From Home, and robbing Peter of his dramatic moment, congratulations, you've completely removed all of the tension and intrigue from Spider-Man.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
The torture he faces from his double life and upholding Uncle Ben's ideals is completely gone. The line he has in Civil War,
"When you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you,"
would mean nothing. Hell, if we assume all of this, then Peter might have just read that off of some super insightful blog post that had nothing to do with anything. The MCU Spider-Man avoids real character tension like the plague. I'd even go so far as to say that both the Raimi trilogy and the Amazing Spider-Man movies have moments of character drama that far surpass any character moment in the Spider-Man MCU series. This is a major Aunt May moment in Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
I've tried to tell you so many times.
This is a major Aunt May moment in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Your stupid, non-scientific aunt who doesn't know how to make ends meet, who has to take nursing classes with 22-year-old kids so I can pay for you to go to college, and I don't know how to do this without Ben. I don't know how. And you're dreaming about your perfect father who was never here. You're my boy. As far as I'm concerned, you're my boy.
And this is Aunt May in MCU Spider-Man 2. Why on God's green earth would you skip major character conflict that is so easily set up for you? And I think the cruelest part of all of this is that it really felt like a movie that could have gone in that direction. The allusion to Happy Hogan and Aunt May dating in the trailers, the shot of Uncle Ben's briefcase, and an entire movie without Tony Stark to physically be there and hold it afloat, I really thought they would go for the real meat of Spider-Man's character conflict. But they did the complete opposite. They write off Happy and May's relationship with a joke, the briefcase is blown up in the third act off screen without anyone caring, and the movie literally cannot function without Iron Man and Tony Stark. Happy dating May could lead to Peter openly talking about Uncle Ben to Happy. Aunt May giving advice to Peter for dating Michelle could be her own experience with Ben Parker. And the briefcase being destroyed could be Peter akin to losing Uncle Ben again. I mean, for crying out loud, we got a dramatic death scene for Penny Parker's Spider-Bot in Into the Spider-Verse, and you're telling me that the MCU can't even bother to keep emotional track of a goddamn briefcase? These are the same people that thought putting a major shift in the world with everyone knowing Peter Parker is Spider-Man in the mid-credits scene was a good idea. Now, the director John Watts has come out and said that everything's on the table when it comes to Uncle Ben's existence in the MCU. He also stated that the focus was to show things that people had not seen before, not retelling that origin. I understood his fear for hanging on too much with Uncle Ben for Homecoming, but by Far From Home, there are some things you need to mention. You don't just go into Daredevil and skip battling Murdoch's tragedy. You can't just ignore the Kent family to only focus on Superman saving the day. I'm not saying we need to see Uncle Ben die in front of Peter again. I'm not saying we need to see the whole thing happen again from the beginning with Peter getting into an argument with him, but I am saying that his presence needs to be confirmed along with his role. Enough of this fake out implication garbage, I'm sick of it. It's like when people say that lore books are akin to storytelling. Just because you write paragraphs of nonsense on a napkin, it doesn't mean you're Stephen King. It has to be more than a vague idea of responsibility that barely relates to Uncle Ben. What Uncle Ben meant to Peter has to be implicitly stated. Because as many people are pointing out, this isn't your Spider-Man, this is a different take. If that's the case, tell me more about this Spider-Man. What real character flaw does Peter Parker deal with that isn't Iron Man related? What was the moment that he decided to use his powers for good? I wanna know. I desperately wanna know. But the MCU clearly doesn't want to tell me. It's clear what the MCU wants Spider-Man for: a plot device and a ticket seller. His standout moments were when he was a side character in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. He is something to illustrate Tony Stark after Robert Downey Jr.'s contract expired. I mean, when he died in Endgame. All of MCU's Spider-Man is that 16-minute appearance he had in Civil War, and that's it. His side cast provides absolutely nothing story-wise, his backstory is obnoxiously avoided, and I don't even know what Marvel Studios wants to do with him. It felt like they only wanted him just to have him, and instead of presenting new dramatic tension, we get slight twists and barely any tension, and it's all thanks to his character being undefined. Now, my boy Tom Holland does a fantastic job with what he's given. He's the only actor that made me actually buy into the tragedy of Infinity War's ending, if only for a second. But he can only work with what he's given, and what he's given is not good enough. Once again, I think Far From Home is a fine popcorn flick. The action set pieces with Mysterio are great, and the third act really picks up the pace. But at some point, I have to fold and want more. I don't care if this Spider-Man is a different take, give me a reason to want to see more of this different take. Maybe Into the Spider-Verse spoiled me too much, but even with that film, it had a drastically different take from Miles Morales and stuck the landing perfectly. Miles Morales in that movie has his Uncle Ben moment, the moment where he could have helped, but he didn't. And even that movie mentioned Uncle Ben and his teaching. And that's why I think Tony Stark isn't a good enough replacement for Uncle Ben. Peter in no way, shape, or form could have prevented Iron Man's death in Endgame. There was no way Peter could have had the strength to help Iron Man truly beat Thanos. And that's the biggest flaw of the character of Peter Parker in the meaning of the lesson learned from Uncle Ben. It's not that Peter didn't stop someone from killing his father figure, it's that he could have, but he didn't. And as Peter says to Aunt May in Spider-Man 2,
Uncle Ben was killed that night for being the only one who did the right thing.
Now there's a rumor circulating that the MCU literally cannot use comic-accurate Spidey characters because of the thorns of the Sony deal. Long story short, the rumor goes like this. If the MCU were to portray a comic-accurate character that isn't Spider-Man, then the character falls under rights dispute and is effectively frozen from usage until an agreement is reached. At the time of this recording, this has neither been confirmed nor denied, so I'll throw it on screen in case either end has been clarified. But even if this was part of the deal, I don't think it matters. The point is that characters have been defined differently in superhero films for years, and that doesn't excuse Marvel Studios to put in character drama that is purely comedic or completely flat. I'd like to speak more on it, but this video is long enough as it is, and I want this video to just focus on Uncle Ben. If you guys would like to see a dedicated video to this, then leave a comment down below. Spider-Man Far From Home marks the last time I'm seeing an MCU flick in the theaters. It's not that the movie was that bad because I still had a good time, but this movie encapsulates the problems that I have with the universe at this time. I still think the Infinity War Endgame combo was a great ending to the major plot, but at this point I no longer have faith in the studio to give me something new to chew on. I don't want to sit here and make a wish list of things I hope to see in a sequel. I'm tired of playing cat and mouse with the producers and directors who seem like they'd rather be doing something else without the House of Mouse being the ever-watchful eye. This is a very safe, very uninformative, and very made-to-ship product coming from a studio that only cares about hooking you into the next installment. I love Spider-Man. I want to see more of Spider-Man, but I no longer want to see any of the MCU. And it's all because they can't even bother to mention the man who made Spider-Man, Uncle Ben. Hey guys, thank you for watching. I know this is a very divisive opinion, it's a very divisive movie currently, and I really wanted to talk about it because I feel like something went really wrong in MCU Spider-Man. I feel like something isn't right, and I really wanted to talk about it. As I've said multiple times in the video, Far From Home is a fine movie. It's a fun movie. I think it's better than Homecoming, but at the same time, it still feels like something's wrong here. So I really wanted to talk about it, and I know I'm gonna get some dislikes for it. I know this movie is kind of a hot button right now. A lot of people are complaining that, you know, this is a different Spider-Man. You should stop complaining. You don't have to follow Spider-Man. Why is everyone hating on Far From Home? It's the perfect Spider-Man movie. It's my favorite Spider-Man movie, and all these people are bashing on it. And to that I say, bitch, I've been a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man movies for forever. You have no idea what being shit on feels like. Your head is in the toilet, I'm in the septic tank.